Good afternoon. My name is Gary Cowan. I'm the Director of Compliance here at Broadbean Technology. Today I'm going to discuss OFCCP compliance, fostering your diversity and inclusion goals, and show you some of the OFCCP compliance and diversity services that Broadbean Technology offers. A little bit about my background. I spent 24 years at the Department of Labor, 16 as an auditor, and 8 years in the management arm in Boston, New York, and DC. Also worked on special projects in the national office. Spent 5.5 years at America's Job Exchange, which was another OFCCP vendor that was recently sold. And about 2.5 years ago, come over to Broadbean Technology to build out their OFCCP compliance services. So I'm going to jump in and talk about a little bit about OFCCP before we look at the services. So who is OFCCP? Office of Federal Contract Compliance Program, an agency within the Department of Labor. Their mission statement is effectively to promote federal contractors to hire a diverse workforce. And they do this through very specific regulations that are required by any organization that signs a contract with the federal government. So what do they enforce? They enforce 3 major regulations. Executive Order 11246 prohibits federal contractors from engaging in any workplace employment discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. And there's 2 regulations relating to people with disabilities and veterans. Federal contractors are to take affirmative action to promote the recruitment of people with disabilities, veterans, and other protected classes. So what is a federal contractor and what are they required to do? Federal contractors are companies that enter in a contract with the United States government to perform a very specific job, supply labor, materials, or for the sale of certain products and services. Federal regulations kick in on a $100,000 contract or more, and Section 503, that's for people with disabilities, for any contracts over $10,000. At this point, once you become a federal contractor, you now have to take affirmative action to recruit and hire individuals with disabilities, veterans, and other protected classes such as minorities and women. There are very specific recruitment steps that you have to take under VEVRA, and we'll discuss that during the compliance services portion of this presentation. Federal contractors are also required to participate and document outreach to the organizations we're going to discuss with respect to disabilities, veterans, minorities, and other protected classes. So a little bit about Broadbean. Broadbean is a career builder owned company. We are a job distribution company with over 9,000 customers worldwide. We're in 186 countries around the world. And one of the reasons I mentioned Broadbean as a job distribution company is the big advantage when we offer OFCCP services. And that advantage comes with the many diversity websites that we can send jobs to, the technology teams that built out integrations with all the applicant tracking systems, and the source coding we're able to provide as a job distribution company, which is a very important component for OFCCP audits. So a little bit about OFCCP compliance services that Broadbean offers. Looking holistically at the product, we offer, it's in 5 major pieces. State job distribution, those are the state websites. Obviously there's 50 states plus additional DC, Puerto Rico, Guam, and some territorial and islands. So we distribute jobs to those state websites and make sure all the jobs are successfully posted on those websites. We also have a diversity network of 19 diversity websites that you can distribute your jobs to. And we're going to talk about that individually when we go on that slide. The product also involves local distribution. We send jobs to the local unemployment offices and also community-based organizations that are partnered with OFCCP. In addition to the local distribution, we also have an outreach management tool, and that tool allows the federal contractor to conduct outreach activities with these organizations. Just as important as distributing the jobs to the state websites, to the diversity websites, and to the local, you also need to verify that job distribution. And we provide a very unique compliance portal that provides you the ability to document the job distribution and download audit reports for OFCCP. And then we have multiple layers of support when it comes to compliance support, audit support, and customer support. And I'll talk about each one of these individually. So how the product works, it's a fully automated process. We scrape your career site URL, your ATS, and we do this on a daily basis. We then take your US-based jobs and distribute them to the state websites, to the diversity websites, and to the local organizations. We then collect all the confirmations and receipts of that distribution and consolidate all that data into a compliance portal, and then give you the ability to download audit reports that are required for an OFCCP audit. We also provide you with alerts of any issues related to your job postings, typically very specifically to the state websites. Posting jobs to the state websites. So as I mentioned, under the VEBRA regulations, federal contractors are required to send jobs to what's called the Employment Service Delivery System, ESDS. And that ESDS is made up of two distinct separate organizations, the state websites and also the unemployment offices. And this section I'm going to talk about is the state websites. So there's 50 state websites, and also additionally Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and some of the islands and territories. And the way we post jobs to those state websites is we create online state posting accounts in each one of those states that you distribute jobs to. So federal contractors decide where they're going to distribute or advertise a job. Once they make that decision, VEBRA requires that contractor to immediately post that job to the state website or send the job to the Career One-Stop Center unemployment office. And we're going to do both for you. So we're going to talk about state posting. So in order to post a job to the state website, we create an online posting account in that particular state. Our compliance coordinators create that account in your name, the company name, by collecting certain information, company information, federal ID number, state ID number, tax ID numbers, etc. They take that information, go online to the state posting account, create the account. The state then reaches out to the federal contractor, verifies the information, that all the information matches, the federal and state IDs match up with the company name, and that the company is a legitimate federal contractor looking to post jobs on that state website. That entire process is handled by our compliance coordinator in conjunction with the state website representatives and our customers. Once those accounts are approved by the state and verified with the federal contractor, we then use those state accounts to post jobs. So through an automated process, we're going to log on to those accounts and post jobs. Now, those accounts also have passwords. Those passwords have to be reset every 30 to 45 days, which we do through automation. Additionally, because of all the security measures on the state websites, these accounts will become inactive for either lack of use, potential security issues, if somebody logs in not authorized to. Our compliance coordinators will work with the state representatives to make sure that those state posting accounts are active at all times. They'll work with the state rep. They'll also work with the customer and make sure they can get those accounts activated. Additionally, if you post in a state that you've never posted in, we receive internal alerts, and our compliance coordinator will create a new account in that new state. Based on the information we already have, we might be able to create that as is, or if the information is required, we reach out to the customer to collect that information. Once we have all the active state posting accounts uploaded into your compliance portal, we then use those to log onto and post the jobs. By answering every question on the state website that's required, company information, information particularly about the job. We then complete that job posting process. And once the job is successfully listed to the state website, we then are assigned a state confirmation number, typically a job ID number, which is issued by the state website. That number is 100% verification that the job was successfully posted to the state website. That number is dropped into your compliance portal and stored for an audit, and that number is provided to OFCCP auditors to verify that all the jobs were successfully posted to the state website. Additionally, you can log on to your state posting account and find those numbers in your posting activity. So those numbers are stored in two different locations, the Broadbean compliance portal and also your individual state posting accounts. So at all times, you'll have 100% verification for an OFCCP auditor that the job was successfully posted to those state websites. Also required when you post jobs to the state website is you're required to give veterans priority for those job listings. So when we create your state posting account, during the registration process, they ask if you're a federal contractor or not. We select that you are a federal contractor. That sets the state website to show those jobs to veterans only for the first 3 days. Typically, it's 3 days. Some states vary. So on the flip side, a job seeker creates a job seeker account and they identify as a veteran. Those two registrations talk to each other on the back end of the websites and put a veteran hold on those jobs. So a veteran will be able to see the job for the first 3 days. If you're a regular job seeker or you just do a general search of the state website looking for a job, you will not see that job unless you're identified as a veteran. And again, that's required by the regulations. Additionally, you're required to have your EEO tagline in every one of your job postings. So what we do at Broadbean is during implementation, we collect that EEO tagline from you and we hard code it into your account. That tagline is never edited as it's a legal statement by your company. But what we do is make sure it's visible to the job seekers. Certain states have a character limit on the job description, and typically that tagline will fall below that character limit. So what we do is in those states, we move the tagline above the character limit so it's always seen by the job seeker and if the OFCCP auditor is reviewing your taglines. Again, we don't edit the tagline, but we do move it around and also verify that it's in your job postings. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, we send out compliance alerts. So as you can see, it's a very automated process to send jobs to the state websites. We have to make sure your state posting accounts are active at all times. The state websites have to be operating at full capacity, which on occasion, the state websites go down, and there's 50 different state websites. So whenever there's an issue, we send out an alert to any number of people that you would want listed to receive those alerts. Those alerts are emails, and they indicate the city and the state and the posting number of the potential issue. Typical issues involve the state posting accounts not being active or a location issue. In order to post a job to a state website, you need a city and a state. And if that city or state does not match, or if it's missing in any way, you will receive an alert, and we ask you to update that in your ATS. And then once that issue is corrected, we'll repost that job or reattempt to post that job until we have all the correct information and then successfully list that job. So moving on to diversity websites. Broadbean offers two networks when it comes to diversity websites, the standard diversity network and a premium diversity network. So what you're looking at now is your standard network. Every one of our customers that signs a compliance services agreement for OFCCP will receive distribution to these websites. The jobs that we distribute to these websites stay on the website, on these each individual websites for 30 days, or if the job expires, we take it down from the diversity website on expiration date. And we're going to track two pieces of information from these diversity websites. First, EOI, or expressions of interest. If a candidate goes on one of the diversity websites and views the job and then clicks the apply button, they're then going to be redirected back to your ATS system. But we're going to track that number for you for each job, and I'll show you a little bit later in a compliance portal. We're going to track that EOI number per job based on the bank of these standard diversity sites. Now, the second piece of information that we're going to track for you is source coding. This is very important for providing information to OFCCP where the original source of your candidate came from. Source coding is a code that we amend to each job posting, and once a person applies for a job and redirected back to your site and completes that application, that code will tell your ATS or carry that information into your ATS, the original source of the website that that person applied for. And it won't become from the bank of these sites, it will come individually. So if a candidate applies for one of your jobs and he or she applied through hireblack.com and completed that application, in your ATS, that source code will come through and that candidate will identify as the original source of the candidate coming from hireblack.com. OFCCP makes this a high priority in their audits that you provide them the original source of the candidates. They want to see if you're getting any kind of recruitment from your OFCCP compliance services network and your vendor. And each year you're going to review this and make sure you do get results from your OFCCP vendor and or distribution. So as I mentioned, this is the standard diversity network. Every one of our customers receives the standard network. You also have the option to upgrade into a premium network. There's an additional 8 sites, bringing a total of 19 diversity sites altogether. The premium is exactly what it says. We pay vendors more to get more applicants, and most importantly, more diverse applicants to come to these diversity sites and search your jobs. So as part of your compliance services, you have the option to upgrade into a premium diversity site and pay an additional upcharge to receive these additional sites. The tracking is exactly the same. We track the EOI, again, the expressions of interest, and we also implement source coding into your ATS to provide the exact website where the original source of the candidate came from. That source coding is implemented free of charge. There's no additional charges to implement that. And as we're integrated with all ATS systems, this is a very simple solution for us implementing source coding. Now, at this point, you'd think you'd be fully compliant if you post jobs to the state website and to 19 diversity websites. But OFCCP also highly recommends that you post jobs locally. So there's 2 different groups that we're going to talk about: the career one-stop centers or the unemployment offices. As I mentioned earlier, jobs under VEVRA, you're immediately required to post jobs to the ESDS, the Employment Service Delivery System. One part of the ESDS is the state websites, and the second part is the unemployment offices. So there's 2,500 unemployment offices, or they're called American Job Career Centers. They're located around the United States, and they're run and funded by the states. Almost all career one-stop centers have business reps, career counselors, vet reps, and disabled reps. And the vet reps and disabled reps help veterans and they help people with disabilities find jobs. And typically the vet reps are veterans and the disabled reps are people with disabilities. The unemployment offices also help the job seekers in a particular state find jobs. They have all kinds of different services, resume services, interview services, provide computers to look up jobs, and they're connected directly to the state websites. Now, as I mentioned, the regulations require you send jobs to the state websites or the Career One-Stop Center. And at Broadbean, we do both. And the way we send jobs to the Career One-Stop Centers is we read the zip code of the job, and then we email the job to contacts at each one of the career centers within a 25-mile radius of the zip code of the job. So your job only goes to the local career centers, not all 2,500. We're just reading the zip code of the job and send it to those local centers. And it's going to go to all centers within that 25-mile radius, regardless of which state they operate in, because the radius can cross state lines. Now, you're required to send jobs to the state website or the Career One Stop Center. Because we do both, you're always going to be in compliance. If a job fails to make it on the state website, it will always be sent via email to the Career One Stop Center, and you will always be in compliance, which is very important under VEVRA, that you immediately list all jobs with the ESDS. Now, the second reason we send jobs to the Career One Stop Centers or the unemployment offices is in 2020 with the coronavirus, you have millions and millions of people on unemployment due to the virus. And in order to continue your unemployment benefits, you have to check in with the career centers. You're required to look for jobs. You're required to take classes. You're required to check in. So there are millions of people looking for jobs in a particular state, and you have the Career One Stop Center representatives helping those job seekers. So we want to get as many of your jobs in front of these unemployment offices as possible to help you with your recruitment. And as I mentioned, again, they have veteran and disabled reps that very specifically help recruit veterans, people with disabilities. Now, OFCCP also highly recommends you send jobs locally. While not directly required in the regulations, they highly suggest, by actually giving examples of organizations that they suggest you send jobs to that cater to protected classes. And they actually have a resource directory or a database of organizations on their website. It's called the OFCCP Resource Directory. This is a list of organizations that have partnered with the Department of Labor through the Employment Training Administration and OFCCP to offer their services to federal contractors to help them recruit people from protected classes. Broadbean has scraped that entire database, and we distribute jobs to all the organizations listed on the OFCCP Resource Directory. Those organizations could be small, local, nonprofit organizations. They could also be large national organizations like Wounded Warrior. They cover every possible protected class. They have rehab organizations, minority organizations, women organizations, LGBT, seniors, colleges, etc. In addition to OFCCP Resource Directory, Broadbean also has an additional 1,000 or so community-based organizations that we include distribution to. All the emails that we send to these representatives are stored in your compliance portal. Those emails have the center name, the type, the contacts we sent it to, the email addresses, all the verification required for OFCCP compliance. Now, you'd think at this point you would be in compliance. You've now sent jobs to the state websites, to diversity organizations and diversity websites, and to the unemployment offices. But there's one additional step that you have to take to ensure that you're compliant under the VEVRA regulations. And that's outreach. So federal contractors are required to reach out to organizations. And it doesn't have to be the ones that they send their jobs to, but they have to reach out to local organizations that cater to protected classes that are helping them recruit veterans, people with disabilities, and other protected classes. Now, a little bit of history of why this happened. Prior to OFCCP vendors being created, distributing your jobs on behalf of the federal contractors used to do this themselves. They used to post jobs to the state websites. They used to email and fax jobs to local career centers, local organizations. And they used to sign up with diversity websites to distribute their jobs. Over the last 8 to 10 years, companies have realized that they could do this more efficiently by hiring vendors to do this, and Broadbean being one of them. Now distribute your jobs to the states, to the local, to the diversity very efficiently and in a cost-saving manner. That was a little against what the regulations discussed. OFCCP wanted the federal contractor had direct contact with these organizations, and by default, when you hired those, when you did it on your own, you had those relationships built and sustained through the back and forth of the job postings. Now, by hiring a vendor, those relationships have pretty much dissolved unless you kept up that outreach. So we provide you a tool that allows you to do that outreach. Now, as a vendor, Broadbean cannot actually conduct the outreach for you. And when I talk about outreach, I'm talking about job fairs, email, phone calls, social media, special events, Zoom calls, etc., where you're basically reaching out to these organizations, creating somewhat of a relationship through email and phone calls or job fairs, and recording that activity to provide to OFCCP in an audit. So our local outreach management system allows you to search the database of those 7,500 organizations. You can search by city, by state, and by type of organization. You then pull up their full contact information for each one of the organizations, and then you reach out and conduct the activity as required by your affirmative action plan. And again, as I mentioned, those are job fairs and phone calls and visits, Zoom calls, social media. And the system allows you to record those activities in the tool. Once recorded, you can have an unlimited amount of people record those activities. Once recorded, then you can provide reporting to OFCCP of the activities by city, by state, by date range, and by type of activity. So it could be you're reporting on all your activity with organizations that cater to people with disabilities in Chicago, Illinois for 2019. And you'll be able to run that report of all the activities from all your recruiters. So again, I'm going to show you that live in a portal in a few minutes. So your compliance portal, just as important as distributing the jobs by the VEVA regulations to the state, to the local, and to the diversity, you have to verify that distribution during an audit for OFCCP. As one part of the audit, they're going to request very detailed verification reports that you distributed your jobs to all these organizations and websites. So our compliance portal will give you a very detailed verification of this posting. We have a state job board posting. It's going to show you the jobs sent to the state websites, how many successful, how many failed, and how many are in process. You're going to be able to run those reports by date range, by city, by state, and by brand. The local distribution will also highlight the local organizations that received your jobs. It'll show the center name, the type of center, the address, the phone number, the email address, the specific contacts that we send the jobs to, and the date it was sent. And the diversity listings, as I mentioned before, will show you the EOI, which is the expressions of interest, and also verify through PDF and Excel reports that the jobs were sent to those diversity websites and the date that the jobs were sent. All reports are downloadable by Excel and PDF. Excel should be used internally, and PDFs should be sent to the auditors. Always highlight that you should not send an Excel document to an auditor, because if there's any kind of sorting or filtering and the document is not saved correctly, your data could actually change in the eyes of the auditor. So a little bit about support when it comes to the compliance services product. We have a dedicated compliance support team. They're located in Atlanta, Georgia. And that's a 10-member team that helps you with very general customer support. Adding a user to your account, if you get locked out of your account, you have a question about a specific job posting, you want to add additional users to your outreach tool, you have a question about the outreach centers that are in the database. That team can help you. They're available Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and they'll respond either through phone or email, and they'll assign you a ticket number and make sure that your issue is resolved and close out that issue. You're also assigned a dedicated compliance coordinator. That person is in charge of your state posting accounts. As I mentioned, posting to the state websites require state posting accounts. And that person maintains those state posting accounts. They make sure they're active at all times and make sure the passwords are reset. They make sure that if you post in a new state, they create those new accounts. And overall, make sure all your jobs are posted to the state websites. And then I'm going to provide full and unlimited audit support. As I mentioned, I was a former auditor for 16 years, and I've spent over 10 years in the OFCCP compliance vendor field, processed over 2,000 audits with a 100% pass rate. So audit support, basically, if you're audited by OFCCP, you provide me the city, the state, and the date range of the audit. I pull all the reports necessary, review those reports, make sure they're going to pass the audit, and then forward those off to you. That audit support also, I will work with your affirmative action provider, your legal teams, your HR teams, and any other contacts that are involved in your audit. I've worked with OFCCP auditors many times. I've called the national office and regional offices to make sure that our customers receive that full support when it comes to an audit. And as I mentioned, we've been successful in 100% of our audits, assuming the customer was completely active in their state posting accounts and didn't let their state posting accounts go inactive and not communicate with our compliance coordinator. That's an exception, and it happens very rarely. Also, I provide free and unlimited training. In that training, I have stock trainings. It could be compliance 101 training, very basic discussion about OFCCP and what they do and what they require for job postings. I also have outreach training. Outreach is becoming very important recently in OFCCP audits, so I provide a training, talks about why OFCCP is looking at outreach, what specifically they're asking for, what is outreach, and how to use the compliance portal that we provide you and the outreach management system. Those trainings are free and unlimited. You can have as many people as you want invited to those trainings. And also do one-off trainings. If you want to just create a specialized training involving both 101 and outreach, or just something very specific related to job distribution, happy to put that training together. Also, happy to schedule multiple trainings if you have people over different time zones and they can't make the training. And as always, we record all our trainings in Zoom and send you those recordings. So I'm going to show you the compliance portal now. So this is the OFCCP verification portal, as I discussed in earlier slides. When you log on to your account, you have 3 tabs. You have state posting, you have your local, and you have your diversity. These three tabs are verification reporting for OFCCP audits. Every one of those tabs, you can change the date range. They automatically default to the last 3 months, but you can change those date range clicking on the date. You can freeform the date by typing in a date, or you can use the calendar feature. Okay, once you have your date range, you're going to hit your save date. You can also filter jobs by location and by brand. So first, location. Everywhere you post a job, your location will show up. These are only your locations wherever you have job postings. So you can filter your reports down to a particular location. You can also filter by brands. If you have brands, subsidiaries, divisions, different offices, campuses for colleges, if you're healthcare and you have different hospitals, you can select during implementation to have your jobs sent out by brand or set up by brand. As I mentioned, brand is a holistic term for all the different subsidiaries and office locations, etc. And that will allow you to run reports very specifically by a date range, by a location, and all the way down to that particular brand. Once you make all those selections of your date range, your location, and your brand, you can then run reports. You can also form searches by typing in a job ID, a location, a date, anything that is listed below will start showing up and filtering out results. Okay. In your reports, we show you job rec number, obviously the brand if you select branding, job title, location of the job, the date we acquired off your ATS or your career site, the date we posted it to the state website. The state identification number, as I mentioned, this is a number that verifies 100% that the job was successfully listed to the state website. This is a number issued by the state website, not by Broadbean, and typically this is the job ID number assigned by the state website. Okay. You look at total jobs, you can look at pending, so those are typically in yellow. Pending jobs are on the way to the state website, just waiting for verification of that confirmation number. Successful jobs in green, those are going to show you all jobs successfully posted to the state website, and then failed jobs. Any vendor that tells you they'll post or list 100% of the jobs to the state website is not telling you the truth. There will always be failed jobs. With the state posting accounts not being active at all times, with state websites not being active at all times, with location issues, there are going to be failed jobs. Now, as I mentioned earlier, at Broadbean, every one of those jobs that are failed are also distributed to the unemployment offices, career one-stop centers. Therefore, you're fully compliant. Okay. All these reports, as I mentioned, you can export to download into PDF and Excel. And as I mentioned, Excel is internal and PDF for U.S. government. You can then also look at the history of a job by just clicking on any portion of the job, whether it's location, the job title, and we'll give you the entire history of that job. Now, let's say we attempted to post a job, but the state posting account was inactive at the time. We corrected it. It would show the correction. So it would show a failure first, and then it was corrected, and then it would show you postings. So this job was posted immediately, so there's no history. But all the jobs have a history. So again, if a job is still active and we make the correction to the issue, we go and repost that job and then make sure that we get that confirmation number and show the history of that job posting. I'm going to show you an example of the state report, what that looks like. So this is a state report. This is what we'd send off to OFCCP. You'd have your company name here where it says demo, the audit date, start date and end date. And if you filtered down to a particular brand or city and state, that would also show. I ran this report for all brands and all locations. You can see the brand, job title, city, state, date we received it, date we posted it to the state website, and most importantly, that confirmation number, which is 100% verification. This report is then sent off to OFCCP. So now you're looking at your local tab. So the local tab is the local career centers. As I mentioned, you have to look at the date range, change the date range, okay? And again, this is all demo data, so it's not real data. Change the date range is 75 jobs posted or distributed in this date frame. And the same filtering, the dates can be filtered exactly the same. Location, again, exactly the same. Brand, exactly the same. And what this does is it shows you the distribution of a particular job. Now you can see all the jobs. These are all in San Francisco, California. The distribution is going to be the same, but if you wanted to look at that distribution, you're just going to hit the down arrow. And that down arrow has the center name, center type, address, phone number, email, and date sent. And then in the middle of that is a scrolling feature where you can scroll down and look at all the locations that job was sent to. Okay. And as I mentioned, now you can see there's different locations again because this is demo data. It's not real to San Francisco because you see South Carolina, but in the real world, it would show offices located in California. But you can see, as I mentioned, career one-stop centers are included in the distribution. And that's important because if the job was not distributed to the state website or listed on the state website successfully, that same job is distributed to the career one-stop center and you're fully compliant. These are the individuals that we emailed the job to at that particular center. So most of the career one-stop centers have multiple contacts because we don't rely on one contact to send the jobs to. We have a dedicated resource to make sure we keep this local listing up to date of all the organizations. And recently, OFCCP just updated their resource directory to include new organizations and updated contact information. So again, you can search all these and look at the distribution. And that report that you would download off to and send off to OFCCP looks exactly like this. Date range of the audit, location, name of the company, this is the job, and this is the distribution for that particular job. All the organizations, center, name, type, address, phone number, email, and date sent. Okay. This is typically a very large report because there's so many organizations that receive your jobs. 7,500 organizations nationwide, and depending on the location, which is typically a 25-mile default, all those organizations within 25 miles receives that job. Your verification tab is going to be diversity job postings. Okay, this is going to verify your postings onto diversity websites. Okay, it's going to list, as I mentioned, the EOI for those particular jobs on the diversity website. So as that's loading, I'm going to show you what the diversity website report looks like that we send off to OFCCP. Same name of the company, date range. Again, if you select a city or a state or a brand, that will be indicated. Depending on the service that you selected, your standard diversity network and or your premium, the diversity websites will show up on the report for the date range. It will also list the actual link to that diversity website. So OFCCP, if they want to go to that diversity website and verify your jobs are posted, they could do that. So these are all the diversity sites for that date range. And then what we do is we look at the name of the company, job title, city, state, and that mention that EOI number. So you can see these one, I know it's a little small, but that says that somebody hit the apply button on one of the diversity websites. So going back to the diversity tab, total jobs listed for the date frame, everything's exactly the same, filtering, PDF, Excel, etc. It's going to show you the EOI. So that's 1,300 people actually viewed the job and hit the apply button, or redirected back to the customer ATS site and started the application process. Now that number is tracked here holistically. So for this job, picker packer first shift, 6 people applied, hit the apply button, were redirected back to the site. Now that does not mean that the person completed the application. It just means they were redirected back to the ATS. Now what happens there is your source coding kicks in and will provide you that exact information if the person completed the application and which individual website that candidate came from. This number talks holistically. The source coding tells you exactly which website. So in the first example, hireblack.com, the candidate applied through hireblack.com, it will show that in your ATS. If it was through disabledperson.com, same process. And as you can look down, you'll see the EOI listed. And this EOI number is both helpful for OFCCP auditors, and it's also helpful for you to determine if you're getting traffic to your diversity websites. Obviously, we strive to get as much diverse traffic to these diversity sites, not just traffic, but diverse candidates to those websites. And then the last piece is the outreach tool I talked about. And that is the one piece that involves the federal contractor. You have to involve yourself. So as part of your affirmative action plan, you're required to reach out to a certain amount of organizations. And again, that's all determined through your affirmative action plan. And you'll have a section in there laying out what kind of activity, the number of activities you have to take on, who you have to deal with, who's going to be responsible, how you're going to evaluate that activity, etc. So we provide you the outreach tool that allows you to do this activity. So first of all, as you can see, I searched Boston as part of, if a job was distributed to Boston, it would go to these 36 centers. Now let's say I want to reach out to Best Buddies, which is a diversity organization here in the Boston area. I selected Best Buddies. the full contact information came up, address, city, state, the type of organization, their phone number, and then we send jobs to Jonna and Craig at Best Buddies. Now, at this point, you conduct your outreach activity and you go out and conduct the phone calls, the emails, the job fairs, the social media, etc. Just as important as conducting that activity is recording and verifying that you could provide this activity to OFCCP when they request it, typically a year after the fact. So all you have to do is hit Add Activity. The center pre-populates, all the information is already filled out. You just have to fill out who you dealt with at the center. Let's just say I dealt with Joe Jones at the center, and their phone number was 617-222-5555, and the email address was Joe Jones at Yahoo. Okay. Now, OFCCP requires 5 pieces of information. They require the title. So let's just say intro call, the date, outreach method. It's a phone call. So it's a drop down. You do have to rate is successful or not. Successful, unsuccessful. NA would be used. Let's say you send out an email and you're waiting for a response. So right now I'm going to put successful. Met Joe Jones. Okay. Now all you're going to do is hit save at this point. Now, looks like there's a issue with the email address. Correct that, and I hit save. Okay. And as you can see, that activity now appears under Best Buddies. And if I want to look at the notes, met Joe Jones. If I want to edit that activity, let's say I want to go back and edit and say, you know what, Joe wasn't really interested. I'm going to change that to unsuccessful. I'm going to hit save. That's how you edit the activity. You can also delete if you upload it by accident. Okay. So this lists all your activity for the centers listed below. So these are all activities I've added during demos. Now this is activity by this center. Now, if you want to look at activity for all your centers, for all your users, for all your activity, you can look at your activity log. And in the new tool that's coming out next week, or in the coming weeks, you'll have the ability to filter by city, by state, by type of organization, by user, and by outreach method. And then you'll be able to run reports, again, Excel and PDF, to provide to OFCCP in an audit situation. So that is the OFCCP compliance services. Kind of conclude the presentation by discussing a couple things about OFCCP and compliance services. So clearly, if you see what I walk through, you'll be fully compliant with OFCCP job distribution requirements. But here at Broadbean, we take those extra steps with respect to the diversity and inclusion goals that you're trying to meet at your company. While the product is priced for compliance, it's designed by OFCCP, the distribution for compliance. We work very, very hard, and we've put in a lot of time, effort, and money to make sure that you get diverse candidates coming to our diversity website network and provide that source coding. So we feel that this extra effort to provide you diversity inclusion goals is the reason why you want to select Broadbean as your OFCCP compliance services solution, because we're not only going to put you in compliance, but also help you reach those diversity inclusion goals. So I want to thank you for your time today. If you do have any general questions or very specific questions about a compliance services tool, you see my contact information. Be happy to discuss those with you and answer any questions you might have. Again, thank you for your time, and I hope you have a great day.